I thought I'd do a little bit more of my story since some of it is pretty wild. So, I'm living in a small town, 1988, 1989, um, in Idaho. So I'm not that far away from Rajneeshpuram, and Rajneeshpuram had shut down after Osho left. And so basically, all the sannyasins were left homeless. And they were looking to get rid of a bunch of books or something like that. So I contacted some center in Seattle that I'd heard about, and I said, well, I'll take a bunch of books, and started chatting with some people there. And they discovered that I was living in this town, not that far away, and I owned some property. And so several sannyasins who were homeless and didn't have any place to live came over and stayed. And it turned out to be a very interesting crew. Two of them were Swami Yogino and Swami Nijan, who were both awakened sannyasins. And there were a lot more actually awakened sannyasins than perhaps we were led to believe. But most of them were kind of just doing their deal to help the overall um, goals of Osho, or his project, what he had going on. So what Yogino told me is that they were part of an inner circle, not Sheila's inner circle, but a particular circle of like all awakened sannyasins whose job was to meditate all day long, all the time, and maintain the Buddhafield. So that's really interesting to think about. I mean, so they came to my house, and they tell me stuff, and I just assume it's true. I mean, there's really no reason to think that it wouldn't be right. And so it makes you start seeing that, the Buddhafield is kind of like really a bigger thing. Like, it's not just one person. Like, imagine, a community creating a Buddhafield. That's kind of more the vision that I had about how it was working. Anyway, you can imagine that I was living in quite the hotbed of enlightenment. There I was, little Ma Prim Serene, all these people. Also, another thing that was really interesting was because I had never heard of Osho until the ranch had already shut down and he had left town, and he already had this huge history behind him. He started out as a young man awakening, and as he went through life, he learned things as well. And he had that whole period where he was silent. But when I met him, when I came and became a sannyasin, he was having this just incredibly creative, dynamic number of years. So his talks were very, very to the point, very radical. I'm prejudiced, but I think it was just the very best time, period. I somehow, I mean, the internet was just very, very beginning. So it's like you couldn't just get on. I mean, I think this was pre-Google. So I was on this listserv and chatting with people and seeing things. And I think there was a magazine or something. Anyway, there was some gal, some ma somewhere who had access to the recordings of Osho's discourses as soon as they came out. And so she started this library. And the way that it worked is she would get a cassette and then she would copy it and then she would mail it and then I would mail it back, or maybe I would mail it on to the next person on the list so that it was just always going. But it was really very efficient. And so I was getting discourses just literally days, maybe a week after they happened. And then also because of the fact that this was before Yogino and everybody came, I'm on this. And so there I am by myself, plenty of time to like really, really listen to everything. So I'm kind of in this hotbed anyway. And then Yogino and Nijin and Bamboo and all these people show up and they're living at my house. And so I go kind of from hotbed to hotbed. So it was a very interesting time. Two interesting stories. Well, I'll tell dynamic meditation first. So Swami Yogino tells me, you are very manipulative. You need to do dynamic meditation. And I'm like, well, okay, sure. I had always just done the Nada Brahma meditation. I hadn't done dynamic. So he sends me off into my bedroom because that was, the most private place in the house. And so you remember it. It's on a tape. So I put the tape in and I do dynamic meditation, and for anybody that doesn't know how it goes, you're like jumping on your feet and boom, 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 and doing all this stuff, and then the music stops and boom, you sit down. And looking back, I think the reason it works is because your head gets all discombobulated and like shook up from all the shaking, and of course, the energy coming up your spine and everything from jumping on your heels, and then you sit down really fast. And I think what happens is you sit down so fast that all your thoughts stay up above and you'll boom go down below. And so I can remember just very distinctly just this vomit of mind. And they talk about near-death experience or death experience where your whole life flashes before your eyes, and it was just exactly like that. And what was amazing was just the intricate detail of everything that had ever happened to me and my horrible interpretations of it or whatever, or my clinging to it. I mean, literally the only way I can just describe it is a vomit of mind, and then after that you get up and dance and you feel better afterwards. So I remember I'm like, okay, that was pretty wild and disgusting. So I thought, okay, good enough, did it. Of course, the next day, Yogino's like, go do dynamic meditation again. I'm like, ugh. Okay. So I go in there, boom, 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 sit down. Same thing. Whoa, this like just literally vomit of my brain. But this time, what was so interesting about it is because like details, I mean, I tell you just, I don't know how you in 1 second can see all that many details, but it was every single detail exactly the same as the day before, with one little addition. I could see myself getting up in the morning and like just literally putting this veil of vomit on myself, and then through the day adding more stuff to it. And I was just like, well, that's ridiculous to do. All I have to do is just not put the veil on, and then I don't have that vomit. And so I decided to never do it again, and I never did it again. And maybe Yogino never told me to go do dynamic meditation again, so maybe I wasn't completely deluded by it. But yeah, like that was just enough dynamic meditation. There's one other thing that happened one time. I'm meditating, and all of a sudden I hear Yogino go, there, that's Satori. And I'm like, what? because what the only thing that had happened was that I had gone just completely, totally normal, like just normal, like normal, ordinary, relaxed, you know. This was after the dynamic meditation situation, though, so perhaps that had something to do with it. But I don't know how I would have ever even known I was in it if he hadn't have said anything. So maybe I was a lot before that, and maybe I was after. And when I look back at it now, it's like, oh, that's so easy to do. Just Satori. Now I got to come back out of it so I could talk. Anyway, that was some very, very interesting times. Of course, only when you really start thinking about it, a small part of the whole story. I'll keep putting it down, getting it out there. By the way, I painted that picture. That's my painting of the old man. It won grand prize at the Limhi County Fair.